Okay, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Saima Naseem, Associate Professor in Pathology Department, DIMC. Today, the topic of the lecture is angina pectoris and myocardial infarction. The objectives of the today's lecture. uh, uh, ये आगे नहीं हो रहा. Okay, हो गया. Okay, the objectives of the today's lectures are at the end where the students will be able to understand what is ischemic heart disease, acute coronary syndrome, angina pectoris, uh, angina pectoris, myocardial infarction, infarct modification with time. Okay, first of all, what is ischemic heart disease? Basically, ischemic heart disease is a group of pathophysiologically related syndromes that results from myocardial ischemia. And basically, what is happening in the ischemia is that there is imbalance between myocardial blood supply and cardiac demand for oxygenated blood. As a result, the ischemia results in limitation of the tissue oxygenation, reduce availability of nutrients, and also reduce removal of the metabolic wastes. Ischemic heart disease is frequently referred to as coronary artery disease. In 90% of the cases, the myocardial ischemia occur due to obstructive atherosclerotic lesions that are present in epicardial coronary arteries. Ischemic heart disease is a late manifestation of coronary atherosclerosis that may have begun in childhood or adolescence. Now coming to the risk factor of the ischemic heart disease, which the ischemic heart disease risk increases when there is increase in the number of the plaques, increase in the area of distribution of the plaque, as well as there is increase in the size and the structure of the plaque. The clinical syndromes of ischemic heart disease. The ischemic heart disease present as one or more of the following clinical syndromes that include angina pectoris. Angina pectoris literally means chest pain. It is most probably due to ischemia. However, it may not be severe enough to cause infarction, but symptoms may risk to cause it. The second syndrome is the myocardial infarction. In this, ischemia is pronounced to a level where it may cause cardiac necrosis. Then third one is the chronic ischemic heart disease with heart failure, where it shows progressive chronic heart failure as a consequence of the accumulated ischemic myocardial damage or inadequate compensatory responses. Then the fourth one is the sudden cardiac death, where the myocardial ischemia may cause fatal ventricular arrhythmia. In most cases, there is a long period up to decades of silent, slow progression of coronary lesions before sudden onset of the symptoms. Now coming to the epidemiology of ischemic heart disease. Ischemic heart disease is the leading cause of death in US, and around 500,000 deaths per year has been estimated in 2008. However, the mortality rate was on peak in 1963. Next, this remarkable improvement is due to awareness regarding prevention of controllable risk factors that include smoking, blood cholesterol, hypertension, maintenance of the normal blood glucose in diabetic patients, and control of obesity and exercise. Moreover, due to invention of advanced and better diagnostic methods, which has allowed earlier and more effective treatments, including new medications such as statin for cholesterol-lowering drug, and establishing coronary care unit, thrombolysis, which is a good procedure for myocardial infarction, then percutaneous transluminal coronary angioplasty, and also more effective treatments like development of endovascular stents, coronary artery bypass graft. Further, there is improved control of heart failure and arrhythmia by left ventricular assist devices, as well as by placing defibrillator implants and causing cardiac resynchronization with pacemaker. Also, simply daily intake of prophylactic aspirin can also be very beneficial. It has been found that 90% of ischemic heart disease patients have atherosclerosis involving one or more of the epicardial coronary arteries. Now, how the acute coronary syndrome initiated? It is initiated when there is an unpredictable and abrupt conversion of stable atherosclerotic plaque to unstable and life-threatening atherothrombotic lesions. The underlying pathology events include superficial erosion, ulceration, fissuring, rupture, deep hemorrhage, and superimposed thrombosis. Now, this slide shows a picture of a normal artery and atherosclerosis artery. In the normal artery, you can see different layers of the artery. Then in the atherosclerosis artery, you can see the atherosclerotic plaque causing coronary obstruction. Then, as I have told you, that in acute coronary syndrome, there is conversion of stable atherosclerotic plaque to unstable atherothrombotic lesion. Here in this picture, you can see plaque disruption, which leads to aggregation of the platelets. Disrupt plaque can undergo healing, causing coronary artery obstruction. However, sometimes this disrupted plaque can lead to formation of thrombus, which can lead to total obstruction or even can form emboli. Now, coming to the risk factor of acute coronary syndrome. As I've already described you, that atherosclerotic there is rupture of atherosclerotic plaque that leads to thrombus formation within the coronary artery. Now, one by one, I will discuss each risk factor. The number one is the acute plaque chain, which is the most important risk factor, which depends on how much a frequent number of the plaque are present, their distribution, and their degree of obstruction. However, the clinical manifestation cannot be explained by anatomic disease burden. Then the other risk factors include inflammation and thrombus. In most instances, the plaque changes are associated with intralesional inflammation that precipitate the formation of superimposed thrombus that partially or completely occlude the artery. Then the last risk factor is the vasoconstriction, which can occur either with or without the coronary atherosclerosis. I will further discuss in detail of these risk factors one by one. The first, acute plaque change, which is the most important risk factor, it includes rupture, refissuring, erosion, ulceration, and acute hemorrhage. And all these changes compromise blood flow. These risk factors their risk increases with increase in the number of plaque, how much they are distributed, how large their structure is, and how much obstruction they are causing. The plaque not need to be severely stenotic to cause acute changes. In 50% cases of the acute myocardial infarction, it results from thrombosis of plaque showing less than 50% stenosis. However, progressive myocardial ischemia induced by slowly developing occlusion may stimulate the formation of the collateral vessels over time, which can often protect against myocardial ischemia and infarction and can lessen the effects of the high-grade stenosis. Now, the risk factor of inflammation. During inflammation, endothelial cells release cell adhesion molecules and selectins. The cell adhesion molecules help cells to stick to each other and to their surrounding. Cell adhesion is a crucial component in monitoring cell tissue structure and function. The selectins are cell surface lectins that mediate the adhesion of the WBC to endothelial cells and platelets under flow. T cells also play a very important role by releasing tumor necrosis factor, interleukin-6, and gamma interferon to stimulate and activate the endothelial cells and macrophages that encounter dead tissue. CRP, C-reactive protein, is a very good marker of the inflammation, which helps in predicting the probability of damage in angina patients. However, one-time measurement of the CRP is not regarded as an adequate predictor of the heart attack. Two separate levels are at 2 weeks apart are recommended. Normally, CRP is not detected in the blood. High risk is there if the CRP is more than 3 mg per liter. And the moderate risk is present when it is between 1 to 3 mg per liter. And during acute plaque rupture, it may exceed to more than 10 mg per liter. Now, the risk factor of thrombosis. It can cause either partial or total occlusion, or it may dislodge as emboli and travel to other sites in the vasculature. Thrombosis is responsible for 50% cases of MI. The vasoconstriction. As I've told you that vasoconstriction can occur with or without coronary atherosclerosis in association with platelet aggregation or due to drug ingestion, that is, for example, cocaine or epinephrine. Vasoconstriction is basically initiated by mediators released from the platelets, for example, platelet activating factor, serotonin, adenosine diphosphate, thromboxane A2, at the site of the coronary artery stenosis and endothelial injury. Now, this is another picture showing 2A and B. The picture A, you can see a plaque rupture without superimposed thrombosis. In the picture B, there is acute coronary thrombosis superimposed on an atherosclerotic plaque with focal disruption of the fibrous cap triggering fatal myocardial infarction. The arrow points to the site of the plaque rupture. Now, the angina pectoris, which is also called chest pain. It is a sudden, recurrent attack of substernal precordial chest discomfort caused by transient 15 seconds to as long as 15 minutes myocardial ischemia that is insufficient to induce myocyte necrosis, but some symptoms may risk to cause infarction. Pain during angina attack is a consequence of ischemia induced by release of adenosine and bradykinin that stimulate sympathetic and vagal afferent nerves. Patterns of angina. There are three overlapping patterns of angina caused by varying combination of decreased perfusion, increased demand, coronary arterial pathology. However, not all the ischemic events are perceived by the patient. Silent ischemia do occur in patients like old people and diabetics. Now coming to the types of angina pectoris. The first one and the most common is the stable angina, which is caused by imbalance between coronary perfusion relative to myocardial demand, usually triggered by exercise, stress, and emotional excitement. Pain is usually described as deep, poorly localized pressure, squeezing, burning sensation relieved by rest or giving vasodilators such as nitroglycerin and calcium channel blockers. The second one is the prinzimetal angina, which is an uncommon form of episodic ischemia caused by coronary artery spasm in conditions having well-developed significant coronary atherosclerosis. This type of angina attack is unrelated to the physical activity, heart rate, BP, and respond promptly to the vasodilator. The third and the most severe form is the unstable and crescendo angina. It refers to the pattern of increasingly frequent, prolonged, about more than 20 minutes long severe angina, usually described as frank pain, occur at rest or precipitate at lower levels of physical activity. Approximately one half have developed myocardial necrosis, as in most patients. Unstable angina is caused by disruption of the atherosclerotic plaque with superimposed partial thrombosis or possibly because of embolization or vasospasm. Now coming to the myocardial infarction, which is also known as heart attack or death of the cardiac muscle due to prolonged severe ischemia. Myocardial infarction can occur at any age, but in frequency increases with age. It is found 10% in less than 40 years and 45% in less than 65 years. Males are at risk. However, women are protected during their reproductive years. Post-menopausal period, there is decline in estrogen production associated with increased coronary artery disease and ischemic heart disease, which is considered as a common cause of death in such old women. Now coming to the risk factors that may cause myocardial infarction. That include location and severity of the rate of the development of the coronary obstruction due to atherosclerosis and thrombosis, as well as how much size of the vascular bed is perfused by the obstructed vessels. Then the third risk factor is the duration of the occlusion. Then the fourth risk factor is what are the metabolic and oxygen needs of the myocardium at risk. The fifth risk factor is what extent of the collateral blood vessels have been developed. And the last one risk factor is the site and severity of the coronary arterial spasm. Now coming to the pattern of infarction. The distribution of the myocardial infarction correlates with location and cause of decreased perfusion. There are three types of the pattern of the infarction. The number one is the transmural infarction. The second one is the subendocardial infarction. And the third is the multifocal micro infarction. One by one, I will discuss each type of the infarction. Transmural infarction. In the transmural infarction, there is occlusion of the epicardial vessels that involves full thickness of the ventricular wall. In this, there is a association of a combination of chronic coronary atherosclerosis, acute plaque change, and superimposed thrombosis. On the basis of the ECG findings, it is also known as ST-EMI, ST elevation myocardial infarction. The second one is the subendocardial infarction. It is in this type of infarction, this is the least perfused region of the myocardium that involves 1/3 of the ventricular wall. And it occurs as a result of the plaque disruption, prolonged decreased BP as in shock, and coronary stenosis. And it is known as non-ST elevation infarct. Then the third one is the multifocal microinfarction. This infarction is seen only when there is small intramural vessels are involved. This occurs in the setting of microembolization, vasculitis, vascular spasm, and it shows non-specific changes, or it can be electrocardiographically silent. Myocardial infarction. According to the pattern of the myocardial perfusion that takes place from epicardium to endocardium. And ischemia is most pronounced in subendocardium, and this is the place where irreversible injury occurs first. Now coming to the myocardial response, how the myocardium responds to the ischemia after the coronary arterial obstruction, and how myocardial dysfunction can take place, and how prolonged vascular compromise can lead to myocyte death. Due to myocardial ischemia, there is area at risk. And this is the area at risk, is the area where anatomic region is supplied by obstructed artery, and it depends on the severity and duration of the ischemia. Due to myocardial ischemia, there is cessation of the aerobic metabolism within seconds, and accumulation of noxious metabolites, for example, lactic acid. Further, there is lack of oxygen and nutrients, and myocardial contractility ceases within minutes. Now coming to this table of myocardial response, which shows with passage of time that the changes which may have occurred in the myocardium. You can see within seconds there is depletion of the 1/7 of ATP. In less than 2 minutes, there is loss of contractility. Then there is reduction of the ATP to 50% of normal in 10 minutes and to 10% of normal in 40 minutes. The irreversible cell injury takes place within 20 to 40 minutes, and microvascular injury take place after 1 hour. Now this picture shows the progression of necrosis. In this diagram, you can see heart with acute coronary obstruction and also showing area at risk. Later, the area at risk develop infarct. In the lower area, you can see changes occurring in the area at risk related to time. In 0 hour, when there is no infarct detected, but with passage of time, the necrotic area increases in size. Now coming to the gross changes in infarct. Gross changes in infarct depends on duration of the survival of the patient following myocardial infarction. Coagulative necrosis, predominant mechanism of cell death in myocardium. Morphological recognition is difficult within few hours of the onset. In less than 12 hours of MI, apparent changes cannot be seen on gross examination. However, with the passage of time after 12 to 24 hours, grossly reddish blue area of discoloration is seen, which is because of the stagnant and trapped blood. Later, it becomes more sharply defined and it becomes yellow, tan, and soft. After 10 days to 2 weeks, there is a hyperomic zone area, which is caused due to highly vascularized granulation tissue. With the succeeding weeks, injured region evolved to fibrous scar. Now, this is a very good picture. in which there is a cross section of the narrowed lumen of coronary artery. Here you can see grossly a reddish blue area of discoloration, which then becomes more sharply defined. Another picture, which is a cross section of heart, with shows area of necrosis between two arrows. This picture shows area of highly vascularized granulation tissue on the right side, and on the left side you can see there is a discolored necrotic dead cardiac tissue. Now coming to the histopathological changes. The coagulative necrosis take place in ischemia, myocardial ischemia, which is detectable in first 6 to 12 hours. Then there is wavy fibers present at the periphery of the infarct. Also, myocyte vascularization take place at the margins of the infarct. This myocyte vascularization reflects intracellular accumulation of the salt and water in sarcoplasmic reticulum. Then there is inflammation most prominent at first 1 to 3 days. Large infarct may not heal as quickly as small. Healing infarct can appear non-uniform, and most advanced healing take place at the periphery. The macrophages also play an important role by removing the necrotic myocyte in 3 to 7 days. And about at first 2 weeks, damaged zone may be replaced by granulation tissue and later by fibrous tissue. MI usually heals from margin towards center. In case of healed lesion, not possible to determine its age, and dense fibrous scar of 8 weeks and 10 years old infarct look identical. Now you can see this is a normal heart muscle histopathological picture, in which you can see cardiac muscle is striated as the actin and myosin are arranged in sarcomeres. And you can see the cardiac muscle cells, they have a single nucleus, and their cells are often branched and tightly connected by specialized junctions. Now, here you can see there is beginning of the infarction with loss of striation and nuclei of cardiac muscle. And this is result in disruption of the integrity of the sarcolemmal membrane, allowing intracellular molecules to leak out of the necrotic cell into the cardiac interstitium and ultimately into the microvascular and lymphatics. In this picture, you can see this continued loss of the cellular vitality of the myocardium. In this picture, the myocardial infarct is infiltrated with the inflammatory cells and the fibroblast. Now, here you can see the infarct is totally established with fibrotic scarring in myocardium. Now coming to the reperfusion. Reperfusion is a restoration of the blood flow to ischemic myocardium, which has been threatened by infarction. It is a very good treatment plan that improves short and long-term survival of the myocardium. Usually, patient outcome worsens with progressive large infarct. The goal is to save cardiac muscle at risk and limit infarct size. Prompt reperfusion is the main objective treatment of patient with MI. Our goal is to dissolve or bypass lesion that precipitate acute infarction. There are certain coronary interventions which has been taken place that include thrombolysis, in which we remove thrombus but does not alter the underlying atherosclerotic plaque. Another intervention is percutaneous transluminal coronary angioplasty, in which there is placement of the stent that removes obstruction and instability which is caused by the plaque. And the third one, stent placement, third is the stent placement. And the fourth one is the CABG that provides new channel for flow by passing area of vessel blockage. Now coming to the benefits of reperfusion. The reperfusion provides prompt reestablishment of the coronary blood flow. The first 3 to 4 hours following obstruction are very critical. They help to know the extent of restoration and underlying causal lesion. The reperfused infarcts are hemorrhagic because vasculature is injured during ischemia and there is bleeding after flow is restored. Further, there is when we see the microscopically, it reveals contraction bands which are irreversibly injured myocytes that results from exaggerated contraction of the sarcomeres. There are certain complications of the reperfusion that include arrhythmia, when there is irregular pumping of the heart due to irregular rhythm. Then there is reperfusion injury that involves oxidative stress, in which there is a disturbance in the balance between the production of oxidative reactive oxygen species, that is free radicals, and antioxidant defenses. Then there is calcium overload, because the cells with damaged membrane are exposed to high concentration of calcium ions from the plasma. Further, there is infiltration of the inflammatory cells, and also there is endothelial swelling that results into no reflow, because these endothelial cells, by swelling, they occlude the capillaries that limit reperfusion of the injured myocardium. The one of the complication of the reperfusion is stunt myocardium. Stunt myocardium, basically in this there is biochemical abnormalities which persist days to weeks in reperfused myocytes, a state of prolonged cardiac failure that is induced by short-term ischemia that recovers after several days. Another type of myocardium, hypernatremic myocardium, may develop as a complication of reperfusion, in which a myocardium, this happens when a myocardium with chronic and sublethal ischemia enter into a state of lower metabolism and function. Cabbage is very good to restore in such a condition normal function of the myocardium. Now, coming to the diagnosis of myocardial infarction, we follow three steps. First, we look for the clinical symptoms. Then we do the lab test, and that also include the ECG. As I have already described you about the clinical symptoms, but quickly we will go through these symptoms that include prolonged chest pain that can prolong till more than 30 minutes. And the pain is described as crushing, stabbing, and squeezing type of pain, and which is associated with rapid pulse, sweating, nausea, vomiting, dyspnea, pulmonary congestion, and edema. And in 25% of the cases, the patient may be asymptomatic, because for example, in diabetic patients, and they come to know on ECG and lab tests about their myocardial infarction. The lab tests are done for evaluation of MI by measuring blood levels of proteins that leak out of irreversibly damaged myocytes, that include troponin T and I, which are the proteins that regulate calcium-mediated contraction of cardiac and skeletal muscles. The elevated levels of the cardiac specific troponin T and I are the most sensitive and specific markers. However, there is another type of the marker, that is creatine kinase enzyme, which is expressed in brain, myocardium, and skeletal muscles also. This is basically a dimer of two isomers MB. MB heterodimer principally is located to the cardiac muscle, and less amount is released in skeletal muscle. So it is sensitive but not specific, and it can be elevated in skeletal muscle injury. The rate of the appearance of these markers depend on their intracellular location, molecular weight, blood flow, their lymphatic drainage of the infarct area, and the rate of elimination of these markers. The levels of these markers are done to check the level of the MI or degree of the MI. Usually, troponin T and I begin to rise at 3 to 12 hours after MI. And these cardiac troponin T levels peak between 12 to 48 hours. However, the troponin Ti levels become maximum at 24 hours. The troponin I levels come to normal in 5 to 10 days, and troponin T comes to normal in 5 to 14 days. However, the creatine kinase MB enzyme began to rise in 3 to 12 hours of the onset of MI, and it becomes peak at 24 hours and return to normal within 48 to 72 hours. Thank you. खत्म हो गया खत्म हो गया। किससे पूछा? हेलो हेलो, is there any question? Is there any question from the students I can answer?
Yes, ma'am. A student asks usually question in the chat, so you enable your
अच्छा
chat.
अच्छा okay. Any question from the student side? Okay, hypernating myocardium is a condition that happens in a reperfusion state. When a myocardium is reperfused, what happens? It undergo a state of lower metabolism and function. Okay, just like the hibernation means that a sleep type of condition. Okay, in which there is a lower state of metabolism and function of the myocardium. Similarly, the stunt myocardium is another condition that happens because of the reperfusion. What happens in the stunt myocardium? There is some biochemical abnormalities. They persist days to weeks in the reperfused myocytes, in which what happens, this cardiac failure is prolonged, and this because of the ischemia, and they recovers after several days. Okay. Another question was about CABG, CABG. This is coronary artery bypass graft. This is a procedure which is done to release the blockage in the coronary artery. Okay, I have explained hibernating a stunt myocardium also. PTA, percutaneous transluminal coronary artery. Okay, this is also a intervention which is done in to treat the obstruction. Any other question? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Any other question they have, or
No, ma'am. I'm not seeing the question in the chat. So, ma'am, we can end the session now. Thank you.
okay, thank you very much,
Thank
all of you.
you, ma'am.